Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are live on X and YouTube. Tesla stock is down 4% to $179 per share. Markets are down slightly today, about 0.5% across the board. The small cap stocks are down a little bit more at 0.9%. Oil stocks are down quite a bit. Oil prices are down 2% today. Interesting. There's a bit of a twisting going on in the yield curve. 5-year Treasury yield is up 3-4 basis points. 30-year Treasury yield is down about a basis point. That's interesting too. Today, Nvidia is going to announce earnings in an hour or two. All eyes are on Nvidia, which is usually a sign that the stock is a bubble, but I guess we'll see. Expectations are high for the stock. Everyone's expecting a beat and a raise. The short interest in Nvidia is very low, and other indicators of sentiment are also very bullish. Finflexity, how are you?
I'm fine today. How are you?
I'm good. Do you have a position on Nvidia?
No, I don't have a position on Nvidia. I usually don't trade US stocks. If I do, I just try to go for options because it's too much of a hassle to, trade stocks from internationally.
Would you mind sharing which country you're in?
I'm in India.
India. Okay. What time is it over there right now?
It's 12:30 at night.
Oh, wow. So you've been joining us past midnight every single day all this time. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I'm usually up till about 3 o'clock, and you guys usually finish around 2:30. So yeah, I'm here
Okay. What time do you get up in the mornings?
around 11. Yeah, it's break from uni right now.
So do you work with a company in US then with those hours?
No, I'm in uni, so I'm doing internships here and there. One with the government, one with the US agency. Yeah.
You're in university. I got you. What are you studying?
Yeah, I'm in economics.
Really? I was an econ major too. Macro or
Yeah,
micro?
yeah. No, I'm currently. It's my first year, so I'm in micro right now. I'll probably transition to macro later.
Wow, you're a first year student at a university. I did not realize that all this time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good having you here. Let's dig through the data a little bit more. Target is down 8%. Let's look at the headlines. That's a pretty big move for a company like Target. The big blunder Target made, but Walmart avoided, according to a Yahoo Finance article. Target earnings revenue fall amid softness in discretionary goods, food. Interesting. Usually, these companies, large companies like Target, Walmart, are good, well bellwethers for the economy overall. Target earnings revenue fall amid softness in discretionary goods, food. Target had a rare earnings miss in the first quarter as consumers pulled back spending, not only on discretionary items, but on groceries as well. The discounter released its results 2 days after it announced that it would reduce prices on approximately 5,000 frequently shopped items across its assortments. The price cuts are already in effect on about 1,500 items, with thousands more to take effect over the summer. Target's net income inched down to $942 million for the quarter ended May 4 from $950 million. So, flat earnings, Gross margin improved to 27.7%, helped by cost cuts. Okay.
Operating
Ta-
margins improved as well.
okay, good. Target's Q1 report demonstrated Fitch's view that discretionary goods spending will be challenged in 2024, but that companies with good execution and benefit of moderating cost inflation can limit the impact of weak top line on earnings, said David Silverman, Senior Director at Fitch Ratings. Hmm. Comparable sales fell 3.7%. What? That's a massive drop. Comp store sales were down 4.8%, which was partially offset by a 1.4% increase in comparable digital sales. Number of transactions fell 1.9%. Average transaction amount fell 1.9%. Hmm.
It's not so
Omar,
bad right now. We had, despite the fact that sales dropped 3%, we had inventory down 7%, so that helped margins a lot.
right. Um, Omar, when you look at a company like Target announcing these results and the stock is down 8% right now, what do you make of, do you kind of draw any conclusions across the economy on a macro scale?
It's hard to say for sure. I haven't looked at the earnings release and why they were down. It could be target specific or it could be macro related. It definitely is a tough economy. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me just check this one quick paragraph again with comparison to Walmart. Goes on to explain that Walmart customers are going to get groceries every week, for example, but then purchasing higher margin general merchandise because they are there. For Target, it's backwards, Storch argues, saying that customers may be going once a month for general items and buying low margin groceries since they happen to be there. Hmm. One mistake
Yep.
Target made years ago that gave Walmart an edge. Target years ago um, made a strategic blunder to basically pull out the full service grocery business. Interesting. Okay, so maybe this is more of a Target specific thing. Omar, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. We got Nvidia earnings today after the bell. I have to do a space with Gavin on that. And yeah, it's kind of, obviously a big deal in terms of just how many people are following it. There's very high expectations. I think it, you know it, it's easy to disappoint when expectations are so high. So we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, there's also some interesting Tesla stories. It looks like the UNECE regulators are going to be getting some FSD beta rides tomorrow, which is great. European regulators and Asian regulators all signing up to get FSD supervised rides and getting a demo of hands-free driving. So I'm assuming they're going to be checking out FSD 12.4. FSD 12.4 doesn't seem to have expanded in the rollout. Most Tesla employees still don't have it. That would probably be the next step before we see it go out to external customers. You'd probably see more Tesla employees get it. And then probably a day or two after that, it would go out to external employees. So watching that roll out, but not too much to report there so far.
How many people did you say?
How many people have it?
Right.
I don't know, but almost nobody as far as we can tell. It seems to have not even gone out to sort of the wave one testers, which make up the, any ordinary Tesla employee. It seems to be more rolled out to a more restrictive group of Tesla employees, senior people, executives, things like that. So we haven't even seen it go out to all Tesla employees. Once it goes out to all Tesla employees or the Wave 1 group, that's when you typically start to see more leaks, people posting videos, and stuff like that.
Inflexity.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Nvidia's earnings are guaranteed to be good. We already have 7 firms within the last 2 days raising their price target, saying that the amount that we had realized we will get in orders for Q1 will be much higher than what we had expected.
Okay. Omar, what do you expect for Nvidia? You're holding your stock for Nvidia, right?
Yeah, I am. It's actually become one of my larger positions now just because of how much it's grown. It looks like it's about um 17% of my portfolio now.
Wow. So that's almost as large as Tesla.
Well, no, I think Tesla's over 30% now. So it's about half the size of Tesla, but it was actually, I think, when I took the position, I think it was less than 5%. But it's just grown so much that it's become a 17% position, and I haven't sold any yet. So we'll see what happens. I'm thinking of this as kind of a long-term thing. I'm not thinking about, to exit this time or when exactly the bubble's going to pop. I, expect that there is kind of a boom and bust cycle with the stock, and we're not going to see this shortage of AI training chips that we're seeing now forever. But if I just look out 10 years, I see us using a lot more AI training compute than we use today.
Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, I own the ETF for semiconductors. I don't particularly own Nvidia, but Nvidia's in it. Been owning it for quite a while. I'm not a big fan of Nvidia. I think it's quite overhyped. I think the numbers will probably be pretty okay. Will not be like they were the last 3 quarters. I'm not a big fan of Nvidia because at the end of the day, they mostly design chips, and other companies will design their own at some point. No one needs to rely on Nvidia forever. TSMC and others actually produce most of the chips for Nvidia, and I do think they're actually quite badly managed. I know quite a few people who've worked there. Not a very good company at the end of the day. It just happened to be the AI boom got in when they got lucked out of the whole thing. So that's Nvidia.
Okay, thank you. Finflexity.
Yeah, in other news that we had today, so I read an article that China is going to be is expected to impose around a 15 to 25% tariff on European gas engines. So that would impact Mercedes and BMW. So in retaliation, we could see the European Commission finally imposing the tariffs on Chinese EVs as well. They have been talking about that for since July of 2023, and it was expected around the same time this year. So that thing could intensify there.
Yeah, I do want to comment that it was only the big gas engines that the Chinese are going to put tariffs on, not the small ones, for things like trucks.
Jimmy, what do you think of this trend across the world of tariffs going up quite a bit?
Well, there are two perspectives here. One is the Chinese did not start it. It would be in their self-interest that everyone had an open market for cheap Chinese EVs and other vehicles. But the European Commission, from the Chinese perspective, does impose tariffs not just on cars, but has historically imposed tariffs on cheaper Chinese goods, food goods, agricultural stuffs, not just in China, but in many other countries. In fact, China was handled with kid gloves compared to many other countries for a long time. So, from the European perspective, they do have tariffs. They have a pretty high tariff economy. Um, they have very stringent regulations regarding what they import, and then they use the excuse of the importance of diligence, of the safety, of quality, and so forth, and then they impose tariffs. So, from my perspective, in the last 15 years, it is unfair to impose tariffs on Chinese EVs, especially since I'm sure you're aware they're building factories within Europe right now. And many of those OEM parts come from China. Obviously, those tariffs will not include the finished cars if they're exported directly from China to Europe. But it is a tit for tat that goes down badly. It will not end well. China is investing tens of billions of dollars in countries which need the investment and are voting members of the European bloc. Now, from the European Commission's perspective, they're doing this because they want to protect their own EV industries like Renault and Citroën and others. But one has to wonder, who's really pulling the strings here? From my perspective, it's Italy and France. I don't think
Correct.
Germany's doing this.
All right.
Germany has Siemens and other companies that
Thank you.
make.
Great. Machine, how are you?
Did you seriously just cut off Jimmy when he was well behaved, providing detailed information, just to ask me how I am?
Yeah, we need to limit. Can you just let me host? And how are you?
Good. My trading accounts are stable. I have a nice procedures in place. I'm eating Trader Joe's coffee ice cream right now, so I'm doing well. How are
What do you
you?
make of the stock price action 4% down today?
I don't know. It went up too much yesterday, so some people sold. Maybe it was Warren. Maybe he sold again. It went down 4%. By the way, it's the dumbest thing. This just shows you how stupid people are in general. You think one guy who I don't know how much money he has, but let's say he sold $1 million or $2 million. You think that caused the stock to tank 4%? These people are so worried that some retail investor is tanking the stock. I don't think people understand how much volume is going in on this stock daily. It's billions of dollars. Okay. This guy did not cause the stock to move. Stop thinking individual retail people are buying or selling or influencing the stock price significantly. It's not happening.
Yeah. It's actually when you count for all the options trading, dark pool trading, it can actually be more than $10 billion a day changing hands in Tesla. So, and in some days, tens of billions of dollars exchange hands in Tesla in one day. So to think that a few $1,000s is going to make a difference, or a few 10,000, 100,000, few million, is just
And
short-sighted or uninformed.
and you have all these people so upset with him outside of that because it's signaling a bad sign. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was nearly all into Tesla and he sold 20%. That means he's like 80% into Tesla. Do you know how, like, in general, big picture, reckless it is to have 80% of your money into one company? That's in general. I'm just saying, in general, that's a quite extreme action. And
Yeah.
you have people on here
Would you
admonishing someone for not
right?
being all in. People who don't know what they're talking about.
Jersey
I'm happy
John
to discuss my portfolio.
Jersey John asks, "Is machine bulking? How can he do that when summer is coming?"
Well, Machine, a very smart person, knows deep into exercise physiology and knows that calories matter more than anything else. And it's okay to eat ice cream if you eat less food. Otherwise, you can eat ice cream. You can. You just have to stop being a chubber and just stuffing everything in your face. Like the host.
What's your position right now in Tesla? How are you positioned? Are you net long, net short?
I still have my very small residual shares, for emotional reasons. Other than that, I have nothing now. I sold my calls yesterday, and
Really?
yeah, because it went
And
up.
you also sold your SMCI, right?
Oh yeah, I sold my SMCI. I sold my
What about
Nvidia.
Nvidia?
Yeah, I sold that. That was last
So
week.
are you like mostly in cash now?
No, I'm. You don't want to know my trading methodology now. I have 20 different stocks that I'm short and long on. Let's put it that way. Most of them are small positions. My biggest position, I guess, is Coinbase and Meta. looking at it. But they're not.
Coinbase.
Yeah, for now. Yeah.
Is this for trading purposes or investment?
I don't differentiate between the two.
Okay.
So, anyways, these are not long term. None of this I plan to hold long term. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It could be months at most, probably. So, but my overall sentiment is, obviously Nvidia's earnings are happening here in an hour, less than an hour, and I certainly will be listening to. Well, if I have a chance to listen to the earnings call, I'll be paying attention to it, and if I like what I hear, I may, get another position on it starting tomorrow or at some point, depending on how the market moves.
All right. Well, why don't you just kind of make a guess on what the Nvidia price reaction is going to be to today's earnings? Let's say after hours and maybe throughout the day, whichever you want to comment on. I'm kind of curious what your guess is going to be.
Well, I mean, I'm still functionally bullish on Nvidia until they change their sentiment, and I'm just going to assume the sentiment on the earnings call. First of all, I expect the earnings report to be strong because I think that's relatively predictable ahead of time. They give pretty tight guidance, in the previous earnings report, and I think for the sentiment, obviously, that can change at any time based on their tone in the earnings call. But right now, I'm just going to assume that it's going to stay pretty positive, and that will appease the market. And so whatever the reaction is after the earnings report itself, if the earnings call is what I expect to be really positive, then I expect the stock to move up.
I'm really just looking for a percentage. Like I just wanted like a plus 5%, not like this blabbering while we get texts without answering the question.
Well, within the next 5 days, it'll probably be up 15%.
Okay. Finflexity. Finflexity. Did you know that Finflexity is calling in from India and it's like 1 a.m. over there right now? Every day.
Oh my God, that is dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually had another news out of United Kingdom. Rishi Sunak has planned his election for July 4th. The Labour Party is expected to win right now, and the Labour Party has been calling for incentives on energy storage deployments across Scotland and North Ireland, as well as,
Okay. Thank you. But
incentives.
the thing is, like, this is the second time you're changing topics without asking. AI driver, how are you?
I'm good, man. Glad I'm not one of those idiots that's 80% in Tesla stock.
Machine likes to
Wait a second. Just wait.
Machine likes to offend as many people as he can in the first 10 seconds.
It's true. That's why
Get
many
it out of
people
the
have
way.
me blocked, because I
Yeah.
speak the truth, and I speak as someone who has multiple times been all in on Tesla, specifically 2018, 2019, but even last year early. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into all the reasons why I think maybe that's not the best idea right now. But if you're a long-term investor, only focused on, let's say, your returns in 5 to 10 years from now, and you don't mind a whole bunch of volatility, it's probably fine. But I'm just saying, I think it's ridiculous to admonish someone to be only 80% into Tesla.
Okay, that's fine. He was just making a joke, man. You don't have to lecture the entire space for 10 minutes.
I think I do.
No, you don't. It's everything's fine.
I have to say though, it is crazy. Every space I go, Warren Redlick, Warren Redlick. I've realized that most Tesla investors are like not that smart. And I think it's just kind of interesting. Like you're just seeing all these attacks on EVs, autonomous vehicles. There's all this bullshit that comes out every day. Oh, EVs run over pedestrians more because they're too quiet. Just total BS. And like we are the few people who actually understand what this stuff is and understand that most of this stuff is BS. But we're all just focused on really stupid stuff. Like whether Warren Redlick sold or what Elon said. And nobody's actually talking about EVs or autonomous vehicles anymore.
Yeah. Well, in this space, we believe in free speech and we welcome everybody, even those who block me, mute me, reply with all sorts of nonsense, like Henning. Henning, go ahead.
I didn't block you anymore, right? So, so I'm not 80% in Tesla. I'm all in Tesla since 4 years, and it had some ups and downs, that's for sure. So I can tell you what gives me hope when the times are tough, like now and the last years, I guess, is that I live in Europe, so in Germany specifically, and we are very much looking forward to FSD, right? So pretty jealous of what happens in let's say the videos from Omar. So I want to see that in Europe. I hope that comes next year, and I think this will have a pretty big impact. People will start saying, "How are you not going to have a car that's driving with FSD?" I mean, it will be a game changer in Europe, I think, as it will be in China, I hope. But China is a different matter, yeah. So,
Omar, what do you make of this difference between Tesla sales and China? It seems to have kind of turned the corner a little bit, I guess. Last week's registration data was very favorable, whereas in Europe, where Henning is right now, things are still kind of deteriorating. What do you make of that difference?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough to have an informed opinion.
Machine, do you have an informed opinion?
About what?
Exactly. Let's go to FOMC minutes. Just came out about an hour ago. Various participants mentioned willingness to tighten policy further should risks to outlook materialize. That's interesting. I guess that explains why the markets are down a little bit. What do you make of that?
I mean, look, the writing's been on the wall for 6 months or so that we're not really getting interest rate cuts. And this is just kind of maybe more evidence hinting toward that. And I know we've all wanted and hoped, and you were hoping, praying, Iman, on your bed for 6 months, hoping that interest rate cuts would come so that Tesla could, make more money. But it seems like it's not going to happen for a while. And I think people need to reevaluate what their expectations are for earnings from this company, automotive earnings specifically, for the next year or so. I do expect, by the way, even your daddy, Elon Musk, was basically begging on Twitter for rate cuts because he was tweeting back at someone who was making some comments on monetary policies, like, "Don't you agree? We should to in order to help the lower income people, we should cut rates soon." I'm sure Elon Musk is really concerned about lower income Americans and their ability to afford Target items. In reality, we know he just wants Tesla to be able to make more money. And this is just writing on the wall that they're not going to be able to on automotive without, obviously, FSD.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go to that extent because Cybertruck obviously has tremendous demand, and Cybertruck is a great product. Production is ramping, and by Q4, Cybertruck will be generating more than $1 billion a quarter to Tesla's bottom line. Not to mention that for every battery that Tesla produces itself, it gets paid for Cybertruck. It gets paid about $5,000 by the government for tax credits. What do you make of that?
That would all be all fine and good if all other things were kept the same. However, I know you're not on top of this, and I am. There's other information coming out from Panasonic on their earnings call that their unnamed but main partner, automotive partner for their batteries, shipped out from Japan. I wonder who that is. Had a, quote, massive drop in demand for their batteries.
Is that for SX, right?
for SX. So
Yeah,
what's happening is
I know
no,
about this,
don't
but
interrupt.
the thing is
Don't
like
Who
interrupt.
cares
Model
about the
S.
S and X?
Exactly.
yeah,
Everyone's buying
Model
the
S is,
Cybertruck.
listen,
Here we
dude, you're
go.
like kind of going on and on about things that we already talked about. And
Won't let me
Model
make my
S and
point.
X, Model S has very low sales already. The new Model 3 is going to, like, why would you get the Model S at this point? I like the vehicle, but Model 3, the new Model 3 is an incredible, especially the new Model 3 Performance is an incredible vehicle at, much cheaper price than the Model S. And I suspect the Model X is also incredible, but the new Model Y, when it comes around in the next 6 to 9 months, I think is going to have some impact on that as well. So it's not that surprising, and
Can
it's
I
also
finish
not.
my point? Can I
It's
finish
also
my
not
People
point?
want affordable cars.
exactly. It's also not
They're not buying
material.
Lucids. They're not buying S and X. They want to buy something where they can avoid taking out a high interest loan. Ideally, something they can pay for in cash. That makes the 3 and Y a lot more attractive. And then the tax credit with its price limits also has really moved demand.
You can't finish your point, but just make it quick, man.
You're talking about Cybertruck. What's happening is Cybertruck is eating into SNX demand. Therefore, in aggregate, the net profit coming from all three of those vehicles may not be that different from before.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some demand shifting from S and X. I mean, the S sales are already very low. We're talking maybe like a couple thousand a quarter. It's really X sales. So I guess we'll see. It remains to be seen how Model X sales are going to trend as Cybertruck ramps. Yeah, we'll see. But I'm sure you don't think Cybertruck sales are going to be limited to Model S and X sales, right? That's not what you're saying, right?
No, I'm just saying that for now, there's a considerable trade-off there. So I don't, in aggregate, net earnings for the rest of this year, for instance, may not be that much better.
Okay, duly noted. Listen, we have a lot of hands, a lot of requests to speak, and a lot of topics to discuss. So nobody get offended if I shut you down, move you down, throw you out. This is all we need to go through these things. All right. Finflexity.
Yeah, so you guys were saying that Model X and F and X demand is down, but from the Q1 calculations, the Model X F and X demand is up by 30% year on year for Q1 right now.
We're not talking about Q1. I think we're talking about Q2 because Q1 there's barely any Cybertrucks produced.
Machine, this is complete FUD. Okay. Panasonic's 18650 sales to Tesla for the S and X are completely immaterial. Okay. Their largest battery partner is CATL. If CATL says, hey, we're seeing weaker than expected orders from Tesla, then panic. If Panasonic is talking about 18650 sales for the S and X, don't lose any sleep over it.
Machine.
I'm just speaking the truth. I'm not telling you how
Okay,
much to
dude.
worry about it.
Okay.
Go
Do you have
look
anything
at
new
the
and material to
bin.
say?
Yes, Model S and X production are down in Q2 versus Q1. I see the data.
Okay.
Of course they're down, but that's why they stopped disclosing the numbers. Now they're rolling it up with Cybertruck. So nobody's going to know unless they look at the registration data. Wink, wink.
Guys, we really got to go. Magic.
Hey, I heard someone was talking about the 0.99% financing, and although it may move metal, it's going to hit gross margins. So, have you guys modeled out what the effect on gross margins are going to be in terms of subsidizing the financing?
Yeah, kind of as a rule of thumb, Tesla got rid of the new inventory discounts and started this 0.99% financing for Model Y. The impact is about the same. So they just moved it from their income statement to their balance sheet, basically. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, do you know what effect of on the cash flow was going to be, and in terms of how they're going to finance that? Is it captive financing? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I don't quite know the details just yet. I think I'm sure they're going to talk about on the next earnings call, and we're going to get some details on the 10Q probably. And I don't expect it to be a material portion of the sales in the next couple of quarters. They'll probably kind of dipping their toes in the water right now, and they're going to ramp it over time. So we'll have more information in a few weeks. Go ahead.
So do they usually are most of the purchases in-house financing, or is it out-of-house financing? Because if it's in-house financing, that's going to be negative to cash flow, since they're going to have to wait for it. But let's say if Wells Fargo finances the loan, then they get all that cash up front minus that discount.
Well, this is a new program. The subvented loans are new. So the incremental change, we're going to find out more about it in the next few weeks. Most of the finance up to this point is not in-house, but we'll see what they do with the new subvented loans. Okay. Omar, I see you reposted Comma AIs. It says, check out the latest tour of Comma HQ. Any takeaway? We haven't heard from Comma in a long time. Any takeaways from that?
No, nothing important.
Okay. We talked about FOMC interest rate outlook. Machine gave us a, so don't expect any rate cuts this year, he says. Is that right, Machine? You don't expect any rate cuts this year?
No, I mean, of course there could be some small 0.251, let's say by the end of the year or something, but nothing significant that's going to materially affect Tesla's ability to make money.
Yeah,
So you
DJ
don't-
Diesel says no rate cuts this year, he believes.
Who?
David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs. He's
Oh.
also DJ Diesel by night.
Okay. Machine, that's assuming that something doesn't break in the next 7 months, right?
I broke your mom's bed last night.
Okay. That was one of the best in a long time. Finflexity.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that JPM's macro analyst on Bloomberg's call after the inflation report, they said that they're expecting 0 cuts for now as well. But they are saying that maybe after elections we'll get 1 cut, but definitely not until then.
Yeah. Yeah, macroeconomics is something I'm really focusing on lately this year, in the last, let's say, 12 months or so, really digging into it. Not on their value analyst account, because most Tesla investors don't really care about these topics, and I don't really allocate much time in these spaces to macroeconomics. But under macro analyst, I do host spaces, join other spaces, tweet about macro. So if you're interested in that kind of topic, follow macro analyst, the co-host. Tesla fan.
So I just had my first FSD drive on my 2023 Model S yesterday from Milwaukee to Chicago, about 90 miles from, hospital parking lot to my home driveway. No intervention whatsoever. It was quite raining. It was bad weather, high winds, and it was perfectly fine.
Good, thank you. Pennington.
Yeah, just a couple things on the interest rates. We have no idea what the Fed's going to do. They've always been bad at predicting things. It could break, it can't break. We don't know. Elon responds to that post. Obviously, he's looking for things to support his points, so be it. But just back to the SX conversation, regardless of the mix, every factory, global factory for Tesla is running below its production. So the reality is the reality. And right now they're operating in a position of weakness, not a position of strength. Yes, they're the best EV company, but demand's an issue. It continues to be an issue. And hopefully there's some other lever they could pull besides hoping that the Fed cuts rates.
Thank you. Alphabet says in the reply, 0.99% loan is through a third party like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Santander, etc. Machine.
That's a great comment, Pennington, especially coming from such a crappy quarterback who basically relied on Randy Moss in college.
All right, I have to interrupt you. Before he had his shoulder injury, that guy was amazing. I saw him in college. He was spectacular. I was a Jets fan. He was really good until he hurt his shoulder. So if I can't respect your football opinion, why should I respect your market opinion? Come on, man.
I don't think Machine has ever touched a football in his life.
I played
Anyway.
football, middle school, high school. But anyways.
Yeah, of course you did.
What I was going to say, though, more importantly, is, I think, your community doesn't care about macroeconomics, which is kind of funny because they're so all in on Tesla. You think maybe they want to care about what's happening in the macroeconomic environment that's going to affect Tesla. But they don't, because it's like a gospel to them. They're praying to their Lord and Savior,
No,
Elon
stop. Okay,
Musk,
stop,
hoping.
stop. We
Wait,
got
I'm
to
not
move on.
finished.
No,
It's
no.
like
All right, dude. Seriously, come on. Yeah, I think most people kind of just write off macroeconomics because they believe it's unpredictable, and to a certain extent, they are right. A lot of people, like if you just look back to 2022, 100% of economists expected a recession in 2023, and instead we got an incredibly strong economic growth. 100% of economists were wrong, which is incredible. And so, macro analysts, I'm just digging into it to see if I can predict it, but it's hard. Omar, and then we're going to go to Jeremy.
Yeah, I agree with you. People's economic expectations are wrong constantly, right? I mean, every phase of the way, we were wrong about inflation. First, we thought it was just transitory, then it was meant to be, then it was too persistent. Then we thought we solved it. The market rallied a little bit. That turned out to not be true. And I've just noticed, looking at Tesla's price action day to day and looking at the comments that Fed officials and bank CEOs and others make regarding interest rates, it appears to be the number one factor driving Tesla stock. Like this, the market is really viewing this as a rate sensitive name. Even though that may be kind of a short term view, that's really what's dominating it. And, any sort of rally, like I think yesterday, Waller made some comments that were fairly dovish. He said, for example, we don't see a rate increase as likely. Today we got the minutes, and we saw them sort of expressing hesitation, expressing concern about how persistent inflation has been. And, you kind of saw a move in the other direction. So I feel like there's all this pent up energy, but really until you see rates start to come down, it's not going to be priced in, because as long as rates stay high, conditions could materially continue to worsen. We are seeing auto delinquencies rise. And as rates stay higher for longer, you're going to see an increase in delinquencies. And as long as delinquencies are high, you're going to see low credit availability, where banks don't want to lend to consumers. They tighten their lending standards. And many people, even if they would like to buy a car, just simply cannot get access to capital to do so. So there's always the risk of Tesla's outlook worsening materially in a way that's not priced into the stock as rates are held higher for longer. And once rates start coming down, I think they'll start to get credit for all the other things beyond their core business that the market is having a hard time giving them credit for in this rate environment.
Thank you. Jeremy, I believe this is your first time speaking in this space. New speakers are required to ask questions in 10 words or fewer.
Okay, I'm just asking if anyone's thinking about the insurance costs, because I've got a lot of friends turning down new Model 3 leases just because of how expensive the insurance is.
Omar?
Yeah, insurance costs are up across the industry. It's a big issue. I think about 20% year over year, something like that, which is pretty crazy. If they live in a state with Tesla insurance, I would recommend checking out Tesla insurance. They have a little bit of a cheaper insurance for Teslas, but there kind of just isn't really any way around it. You can shop around, try and get the best quote, but insurance is just more expensive these days. And you can always try and ask for a policy with less coverage if you need to get the monthly payment down.
Pennington. We moved on from Macro Pennington.
Oh
Anything
yeah,
else?
there's also one more thing I wanted to mention. There's a company called Metromile. For people who don't drive a lot, they have a pretty low base rate, and then they charge you per mile insurance. So like, 10 cents per mile or whatever. And that can be a good option for people who need to keep their monthly payment down and don't drive a ton of miles every day.
Okay. Suno AI has raised $125 million, Omar tweeted. Suno says, we're excited to announce that Suno has raised $125 million to build a future where anyone can make music and where technology amplifies our most precious resource, human creativity. We will use this funding. What's the significance of this company, Omar?
I wouldn't say it's that significant, but it's kind of just a fun little thing. You can type in a prompt and it'll generate a song. So I could say, for example, like create a theme song for Tesla Live or something like that. And it could just create a song within a second. So, I mean, generally, we're seeing a pretty hot fundraising environment for AI companies. You saw Scale AI raise a round. You saw Grok, which is kind of a competitor to Nvidia, raise I think over $100 million. You're seeing Suno, many others. So VCs love writing checks to AI companies right now.
Yeah, that money definitely hasn't dried up yet. Machine.
Yeah, I tried one of these song things once. I asked it to write a song about Omar's mom, and it gave back a Missy Elliott Lick It song.
Let me look at this Jeremy's profile. CEO owner of New Pro. If I click on it, New Pro Containers. Manufacturer, wholesale, distributor, commercial grade plant containers. Interesting. Investor in 15.5. Click on strategic performance management platform that drives action impact. Okay. Board member at GPG. What's that? Communicating aesthetic well-being, economic benefits of nature. And a co-founder AI execution group. Jeremy, how'd you come across this? How'd you come across this space?
It literally just popped up in my feed while I was messing around making a pizza.
All right. What kind of pizza are you making?
Nothing crazy, just like a Tostino's oven pizza.
Are you a Tesla investor too?
Yes, I have just under 500 shares.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, you'll come to the right space. I'm going to move you down so you can continue with your pizza. Make sure you share, save some for us. All right. Nvidia earnings after hours going to move markets probably. Grok seeking to raise $300 million according to the information. Nvidia challenger Grok enlists Morgan Stanley to raise $300 million. Machine, the percentage of rise on FST 12.3.6 is stuck at 96% with no disengagements. Percentage of rise with no disengagements, still at 96%. What do you think that number is going to be with 12.4?
I mean, I'm just wild guessing that it will. I think it will go up. So I would say 98%.
You think it's going to go to 98%?
I mean, if the CEO is correct, and I don't think this man has ever lied before, but if he's correct, that there's a 5 to 10x improvement in reducing interventions, then some of that will come back to critical interventions. Even if it was like a 2x to 4x, that would be enough to move it to that target value I just said.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Baymax, what's your question? Baymax, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
What kind of data is Tesla's semi team analyzing from the original 38 trucks delivered to Pepsi to specifically refine their long-term plans to scale this product?
Machine, do you have anything to say on that?
No, sorry, distracted.
Yeah, Baymax, I don't know what kind of data Tesla's collecting, but my understanding from listening to these earnings calls, especially Rivian's earnings calls over the years, when they discuss their van program, the pilot programs with these commercial customers takes years. So it seems to be that Pepsi is content with what they have, and they're continuing to get more semis. I don't know when the volume production is going to start. I think that depends on the expansion plans for Giga Nevada. It depends on 4680 battery production. And I believe there's a website out there that actually tracks some of this data that you're talking about too. So if I find it, I will send it your way.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Uzi?
Hey, no, I was just giving you a thumbs up, man. I love the macro talk.
Yeah. Why?
I mean, not Yaman. Omar hit the point that I was going to make on the button. It was just it seems like the lower 20% of consumers are having difficulty with the high rate environment, and I don't like thinking of Tesla as a cyclical company because of FSD and the sort of transition to a SaaS play.
Yeah. Joe Tagmeyer says, Machine, did you see this new casting machines that arrived at Giga Texas? What do you make of that?
No, I have not. Why don't you tell me about it?
Joe Tagmeyer says, it's IDRA delivery day at Giga Texas, this time to the die shop. 2 heavy lift trailers on semi-trucks plus additional wooden crates arrived today and moved directly inside the west door of the Addy shop where bridge cranes will unload the crates. This is important for casting design, testing, maintenance, and future products. And Limited Factor says this is new casting equipment arriving in Texas. New products.
Well, I mean, aren't they supposed to be creating some other vehicles on the 3 and Y lines by maybe something by the end of this year, even Musk said? So do you think it's related to that? Or is this for a whole new production line?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speculate. I guess we'll find out. But if they're bringing the equipment in now, the production isn't going to start until next year. So Volkswagen announced today it has delayed the launch of its all-electric ID.7 sedan in the US and Canada, citing changing market conditions. So this is yet another legacy automaker canceling programs. Tesla Energy announced with SunPower, America's highest-rated residential solar energy company, it will now be offering Tesla's Powerwall 3. Interesting. Finflexity.
Yeah, so this was some EV news that came out today. GM has officially begun selling its Equinox EV, the 35K one, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Pennington, have you changed your position going into this vote?
That's a good question. Yeah, I actually did. I did change my position. But ultimately, I voted for it. But there was a point in time where I voted against it. And as I said to you previously, I am so uncomfortable about this vote.
Because you don't think it may not pass? Or
not that I don't think it's going to pass, it's that I'm not confident that voting yes is the moral thing to do relative to his, in my opinion, lack of performing his fiduciary duty over the last number of years. I think that's I'm not going to say a crime, but that's the word that comes to mind. But that's an action that forces me at points to want to negate what his accomplishments were relative to that earlier vote from 2018.
So then why did you ultimately decide to vote for it?
Honestly, it's as simple as he's holding, and again, this is just my opinion. He's holding shareholders hostage to his interests. I want Tesla to succeed. I want Tesla to be about Tesla, not to be about these sideshow antics. and if giving him what he's wanting is going to satisfy that, then so be it. Because I do fear that this guy's capable of just unleashing holy hell. There's that possibility, and that's not good for shareholders. That's not good for the transition to electric vehicles. That's really not good for anybody.
So you voted for his plan for the mission, basically.
Yeah, for the mission, correct. And again, voting for his plan is temporary in the sense of that satisfies this part, but there's another important part of the triangle, which is the 25%. And I really don't know how the board is going to accomplish that without further dilution. And I hated that post from earlier this year about that. I thought that was so disingenuous on his part, but nonetheless, that's just another thing he's thrown out there, and that's what we have to live with. But yeah, it was for the mission.
Have you changed your Tesla shares or other holdings ahead of this vote? Did you
No,
buy
I've
insurance or
actually,
sell shares or anything like that?
if anything, I've actually increased my shares over the last few weeks. So, because as I said before, I believe, and just my belief, I believe that Tesla, with or without Elon, taking away all the antics that could happen if it's voted yes or it's voted no, is worth substantially more than what it's worth today. So I think, again, the intrinsic value of Tesla is higher than $500 billion, I believe, by a substantial amount. So that being my measuring stick, I purchase more shares. I think it's more likely the vote does than does not pass, but there's a chance it doesn't. And there's going to be some period of time where there's going to be chaos. And I just hope that this board that's made an incredible amount of money off of Tesla stock has a contingency plan that they're ready to follow through on in the event Elon is exiting Tesla if the vote does not go his way.
Okay. Bull 2035.
Yeah, I guess my question is, would we even have electric cars like they are now without Elon? Every other business outside of China is failing or failed. So I don't think we would. I give him a lot of credit. So if I want EVs, we got to do what he needs to continue what he's doing.
Yeah. And even in China, it's really just BYD that's grown profitably. And it's BYD in part because half of their sales are hybrids, half of them are pure electrics, and they're vertically integrated into battery production. And they're marginally profitable despite all that. And they have full support of the Chinese government and everything. Pennington.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, 100%, this man's vision is second to none. I would even say on an historical basis. It's incredible what he's been able to envision, his force of will, his accomplishments, and what he's still capable of achieving if he stays at the helm. Nobody, regardless of how this vote plays out, could ever take that away. And whether or not he stays or doesn't stay, I still think that the electric vehicle trajectory will be on the upslope for decades to come. So kudos for everything, but that, as I said before, that is not an excuse to just say I am consciously, willingly going to engage in these other activities that I know will hurt the brand, that I know will attract political attacks against me, which will ultimately harm the brand. He said this, he disclosed this, but he did it nonetheless. And us shareholders, we got to live with it or sell our shares and be done.
Melissa,
Hello. Can you hear me?
what's your question?
Oh, it's not a question. I was just listening to greetings.
First time speakers are required to ask questions. Uzi.
I don't think in the long term you will see more innovations in EVs like the Cybertruck without Elon fleshing out these cost efficiencies. I mean, we all know vertical integration leads to more efficient production, but we won't get any novel technology without the visionary part of Elon.
I mean, I can understand Pennington's frustration, and I agree with Uzi as well. And I think Pennington agrees with Uzi as well. That's why he voted for board's recommendations. And Pennington, one of the arguments that the judge made when striking down Elon's compensation and sending back to shareholders for a vote, or I guess back to board, is that she, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not my expertise area, okay, but she said something like, Elon would have worked anyway. You didn't have to pay him that much. There wasn't a, kind of arm's length negotiation. So, and I think Elon made a comment in the deposition when he said something like, I would have stayed anyway at Tesla. And I think that's who he truly is, that I think that he would stay anyway, even without the pay. I think that he would, want to see the mission through at Tesla. He would want Tesla to succeed, even without the pay. But the thing is, that kind of comment and that kind of approach hurts his legal case. So, I can't prove this, but part of me believes and want to believe that Elon made that comment because he's building his legal case that I would walk away, kind of showing that he would walk away without that pay. What do you think of that, Pennington?
Sort of on that tangent, I was speaking to somebody yesterday, a friend of mine, and I said, let's just say the shareholders reject the compensation plan and Elon leaves. So Elon's going to say, I was rejected, so I'm out. Now we know he was forced out of PayPal, and we also know that he did not get along very well and was ultimately forced out in some ways from OpenAI. So these are, or would be, real black eyes on his legacy. Now, I ultimately do believe, and this is consistent with Adam Jonas's note yesterday, that I think he does need Tesla. Losing Tesla, losing his control, not fulfilling this mission, any perception that he could just start this elsewhere, I find to be completely disingenuous. But by him saying that he would say for nothing is bizarre, because when you read the proxy that came out yesterday, you could laugh at those shareholders. I think they represented something like 0.3% of the shareholder base, and you could say sour grapes or whatever it is. But you look at through their arguments, and just on a factual basis, it's very hard to disagree. But ultimately, he should not have to work for nothing simply because he has this ownership interest in the
Well,
company.
so I guess, but that really plays into what I'm saying, right? So
Right.
you said he can't just walk away. Like logically, he can't really just walk away and take, AI capabilities or most of the engineers out of Tesla. So that plays into what I'm saying is that he has to say that to build his legal case against, the idea that he would work for free. So why are you giving him all this money?
I agree. Now, the problem is, in order to build his legal case, he is sacrificing shareholders, which now we all know this. The market hates uncertainty.
He's not sacrificing anybody. What do you
Well,
mean?
okay, maybe that's a wrong word to use, but at least it is adding uncertainty. And in my opinion, it is not in the best interest
Well, in
of.
the short term, maybe, right? But in the longer term, like a lot of longer term investors that have been stuck for more than 10 years, some more than, I mean, about close to 20 years now, would say that's a great buying opportunity. If you're a true long term investor and you have some sort of income coming in, that's an opportunity in the shorter term for you to buy more shares. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's that's an argument that I hear a lot of Uber bulls say, but unfortunately, for me, that does not answer the question. It's sort of saying, "Well, buy the dip." but let's deal with the issue itself. And in this instance, I would rather focus on whether or not it's appropriate for him to include this element of uncertainty. Now, yes, undeniably, if you have cash flow and you want to add shares, you could say, well, it's a buying opportunity. But this uncertainty, this quote unquote Twitter overhang, has been around now for a couple of years. And as a shareholder, now I don't think Nvidia shareholders saying, well, I really hope it goes down so much because we want to buy the dip. So let's hope Jensen says, unless I receive X, Y, and Z, I'm going to leave, or Sam Altman says to OpenAI that I want more equity or I'm going to leave. And that's going to present me with a buying opportunity. So again, I would rather deal with the question of whether or not it's appropriate to introduce that in the first place before suggesting that it could be.
But he had to, like, so if my theory is correct that he had to say these things to his legal, like, how would he do it otherwise?
How would he do what? How would he defend his right to receive?
How would he build his legal case? How would he build his legal case against this idea that he would do it for free? Why are you paying all this money?
So when he says something like that, obviously it comes across as being a very noble, altruistic comment by his CEO. Now, if his case is just, then hopefully having shareholders this time around vote in favor of it will be definitive and the end. But if this is a shareholder vote that's going to be in the June 13th verdict, if that,
You're not answering my question.
please
John Lee,
ask the question again. I'm sorry. I'll answer it very directly. I promise.
the question is, he has to build a case against this idea that this guy would work for free, and he would work free because he cares about the mission, he cares about the company, he would work for free. But from a capitalistic perspective, right, the judge is saying, why are you paying this guy all this money if he's going to work for free anyway? So what does he have to do? He has to say these things to build his legal case. Like in a negotiation, I don't know if you've been part of many negotiation, but I was an investment banker before. I was an M&A investment banker. You have to be able to walk away to get the most, right? So from that perspective, he has to make it look like, at least appear as if he could walk away. That's my guess. I've never met the guy. I don't know. Okay. But my guess is that he genuinely cares about the mission, genuinely cares about the company. But if he says out there, I would do this for free anyway, I genuinely care about this thing, then the judge is going to say, then don't pay him this much money, and she's going to strike it down. So my guess is that he was legally advised to say these things. Okay. And I can't think of any other way to do it either. Right. So anyway, I understand you're frustrated, but at the same time, like, just consider the fact that he's been at this for 20 years. He didn't have to do any of this stuff. He could have bought an island and checked out. Right? He didn't have to build a car company. He didn't have to build a space company.
I think your argument is it's just and it's valid and it could definitely be applicable. However, I don't know if that answers the other issues of that the judge raised regarding the board of directors. So
Right. So that's a different part of it. We got to move on. We have to hands up. John Lee.
Yeah, with regard to the Delaware decision, is that not still subject to appeal? And even if the vote goes against Elon Musk with his compensation package on January or June 12th?
Yeah, my understanding is it is, but obviously if the vote doesn't go through, then your appeal case is going to be a little weaker. And if it does go through, especially with Elon and Kimball, abstaining, then you have a much better case.
Thank you.
Lauren, then Stacy.
I'm curious what Pennington would think of a solution to this, saying that say we get through this current thing, either this thing passes and the judge reverses their decision, or the board comes to some agreement on 2018 that Elon accepts, And in terms of the 25% he wants, they managed to reincorporate in Texas and create a new package going forward that, very ambitious goals once again. But if he were to achieve them, rather than normal stock like he got last time, he would get special voting shares that were, 100 votes per share, so that the reward would be primarily in votes, not so much dollars, and it wouldn't be so much monetary dilution to shareholders. I'm curious from your perspective, does that sound like a solution that you think would be fair and okay, or is that outrageous? Or just curious of people's opinion.
Do you want me to answer, or do you want us to go, Yaman? I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Yeah, you can answer the question, then we're going to go to Stacy.
Something like that would be fine, but I guess I'm not. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. When Tesla was first incorporated, when Tesla first became a stock, it was just a single class stock. It wasn't like Facebook, where there's Class A and Class B voting and non-voting. Tesla was all in one. So I don't know at this point if they could say we're going to now bring out this thing called Class B shares and non-voting shares, and we're going to give those to Elon so he has a 25%. I don't know if that's possible.
Stacy.
Hi, Yaman. Yeah, great. I was listening to Pennington, and it's interesting how people like Pennington tend to have this belief that, somehow saying that Elon's been distracted and he's doing a disservice to the company and shareholders. When, it sounds like if a priority for him were the companies that he invested in had CEOs that had no outside interests, then it sounds like Pennington failed to do his due diligence, and all these people who have a beef with Elon having outside interests, if that's a priority for them, they invested in the wrong company, because it's up to Tesla and the shareholders to vote in what the compensation package looks like, what the contract terms are for the CEO. And if it doesn't stipulate you can't have outside interests, then what's all this directed at Elon for? So that's my only point, is that they're whining about something that it sounds like it's a failure on their part. If they want their CEOs not to have outside interests, then they shouldn't invest in companies that don't put restrictions or limitations. And that's all I had to say.
Ken.
This vote on June 13th, I think Tesla really misframed the question. And you have to look at the vote and ask yourself, what changes in Elon's position from now until then if the vote is approved or not approved? Right now, Elon's 2018 compensation package has been rescinded. The judge put the parties back into the same position they were in 2018. If this shareholder vote on June 13th gets approved, all that's doing is saying to the Tesla board of directors and their attorneys, hey, we want you to go back to the Delaware judge and ask for a do-over. Say, hey, we've done it right this time. Do you approve? It's up to the judge. If the vote is no, then Elon is in the same position he was in prior to the vote. Nothing has changed. He only has the appeal of the original decision, and that will proceed on. So nothing's really changed. If the question presented to the shareholders would have been, hey, do you want us to go back to Delaware and ask the judge that we've done it right this time? People would understand it, but people don't understand the way they framed it. Tesla's board framed it as, hey, if you approve this shareholders vote, Elon gets his money. That's not true. That's not what's going to happen. And as Alexandra said, nothing is going to happen on the June 13th vote date. And she's correct. June 14th will go on, June 15th will go on, and it'll be the same. The only thing that changes is that Elon has a chance to go back to the judge and say, hey, approve it now because we did what you wanted. And then there'll be...
So how is that nothing changed?
Because it's still up in the air.
Okay,
His
but the case is
compensation
much
is up in the air
the
now.
case for the appeal is much stronger, right?
In my opinion, no.
Really?
Yeah.
If all the disclosures are given and then some, and the shareholders still approve it, nothing has changed.
You're talking about something similar, but based out of the same facts.
I disagree.
Okay.
Billy Bob Joe.
Actually came up to comment on the tooling subject from earlier. Not this topic. So if you'd like me to, I will.
Okay, yeah.
Otherwise,
go ahead.
Okay, so we know from the Isaacson book that the summer of 2022 is when Elon made the decision to have no steering wheel, no pedals, and he said, "This is on me. I'm making this choice." Well, why was there a deadline in the summer of 2022? It's because, of course, tooling has a very long lead time to make these very specific factory tools. And so it's not surprising to me that they placed these orders in summer of 22 and the tools are now arriving at Giga Texas for the Robotaxi. If you look at the book, it also says in the summer of 2023, so last summer, Elon spent a lot of time in Austin designing that production line. So the tools are coming in, the production line is I assume it'll come together pretty quickly. Maybe we'll have production early next year, like Elon guided to in the call. And so if we see this progress that we're looking for in version 12.4, 5 to 10x, and we apply scaling laws to that, I think you can see a convergence on the timeline or on the horizon where FSD is being solved at the same time that this production line is coming into play, and things are shaping up quite nicely. Even without this comp package, if Elon doesn't get it, he still owns enough shares that this Robotaxi will make him the world's first trillionaire. So I don't think this is all that crucial of an issue for him.
Okay. Do you use FSD?
I use it with some of my colleagues who own Teslas in their cars.
Mm-hmm. When do you think the first commercial paid Robotaxi ride is going to happen?
I think that depends on how quickly this production line can start operating. If they can crank out, let's say 50 or 100 cars late this year, I think they can find some small town in Texas or somewhere to authorize a pilot program. And so it could be at the very earliest, at the very end of this year. I would be more confident in first half of next year.
Well, Omar, who's not here right now, but he said many times that what they're going to do on 8.8 is unveil a Robotaxi, basically a prototype, and the product isn't going to be produced until, I believe he said late next year, or maybe even 2026. I think your timeline might be a bit optimistic about 50, 100 Robotaxis doing purpose-built Robotaxis doing pilot program this year. How confident are you in that prediction?
Yeah, the prediction for late this year, I would only have very low confidence, maybe 25%. But the first half of next year would be high.
Let me actually ask you. So it sounds like your timeline for Robotaxis is limited by hardware production. Let's assume for a second that hardware is not a limiting factor. From a software capability, when do you expect FSD to become Robotaxi good?
Yeah, I think it'll be in. I think the most optimistic case is sometime in August. And I read a really interesting post from a gentleman named Rains last night that kind of outlined his thoughts on it based on what he's seeing. I think these things generally have delays that are unforeseen, and there's some validation that takes longer. And so I would say maybe October, November is when it'll be that good.
Okay. First, before I offer you a coffee bet, I've seen the Rains account a few times. What do you know about that account? Do you know who it is or their experience? And when did you start following them?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the individual, so I can only, the weighting I put on that information, I can only evaluate based on, what I can determine the credibility is. I think it's fairly credible, but I don't know the person.
Okay, so you don't know the person. Do you know what they do?
Yeah, from previous comments, they're in the machine learning space. Yeah.
But like specifically, what did they do in the machine learning space?
No, I don't know that.
Okay. So anonymous accounts that just came about, we have no idea who they are, what they do, and yet we're willing to cite them as a source, what they say. I think that's a little ambitious.
I agree. Yeah, and I think you have to look at multiple different sources and weigh their credibility, and then aggregate it all together and come up with your best estimation.
Okay, so you said that you believe FSD will be at a robotaxiable level by October, November, I believe you said. So how do you kind of define robotaxiable level?
Yeah, I would define it in the nines. And so if this update takes us to 99%, 12.4 drives without intervention, and more importantly, 99.9 without a safety critical intervention, and you can extrapolate that, and apply the scaling laws we've all learned about. I think they need to get to about 4 nines for it to be at least ready for a pilot program.
Okay. So 99.99% of rides without a safety critical disengagement is where you draw the line for robotaxi level. And you're go ahead.
No, that's what I think 12.4, 12.5 will get us to. I think they need 4 nines, 0.9999 without safety critical.
Okay. So I'm willing to bet you coffee that we will not have 99.9% of rides without a safety critical disengagement until next year. Are you willing to take that bet?
Yeah, would we be using FSD tracker for this?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So we're betting on 3 nines as defined by percentage rise with no critical disengagement. And that's displayed on TeslaFSDTracker.com. And I don't think it's going to happen by the end of this year. And you believe that it will be. And you believe actually it's going to be 4 nines, but we'll bet on 3 nines. All right. Great. We have a coffee bet. Any change in your views of Rivian?
No change. Everything is the same. I thought the stock price was interesting today. I think it was up 6% or something, and Tesla yesterday had the same day. So I think there's some just real wonky movements happening in the EV space right now, and I think it's I lost the word predecessor, or there's something is brewing in the EV space.
Yeah. Rivian stock was up 6.5% today. It's up 5% in the last 5 days, up 18% in the last month. So I was going to ask you that. So there's no specific apparent reason why the stock is up today, 6.5%?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think there was a specific reason, for Tesla yesterday. I think these are just weird moves that are happening. And I think you usually see weird things happen like these before larger moves start to happen.
Okay. Did you see my post about the resale value of an R1S at bringatrailer.com? What did you make of that?
Yeah, I did see that. I think we had a quick back and forth. I think it was like 29-30%. So not uncommon depreciation. I don't think for a $90,000 SUV that's a year old, 30%. Obviously, it's not great for them, and it shows that their demand is not in excess of what their production is, and so obviously their demand's less than their production, which is why they're seeing such depreciation. So I think for them, they need to hope that this refresh brings some changes that get people excited and increases demand for the rest of the year so they can hit their margin targets.
Okay, thank you. Finflexity.
Yeah, Nvidia's earnings have dropped and the stock just popped by $30 in 1 minute.
Okay. The stock was up about more than 4% after hours after the results. Nvidia results came out. It's now up about 3.3%. Let me just look at the headlines real quick, see what's new. Reports 262% jump in sales. Signals continuing AI boom. Nvidia reported its first fiscal quarter earnings on Wednesday that beat expectations for sales and earnings, and the stock rose slightly in extended trading. Nvidia will hold a conference call to discuss the results this afternoon, which can be listened on the Nvidia's website. Earnings per share $6.12 adjusted versus $5.59 adjusted expected. Revenue $26.04 billion versus $24.65 billion expected. Okay. I'm going to do my usual after party for patrons after the space ends, starting in about half hour. And then I'm going to listen to NVIDIA's call later on and publish my notes on NVIDIA's earnings call in the Big Tech chat room in Patreon. Finflexer, do you have any shares in NVIDIA?
Yeah, like I said, I had bought options last week, but I don't like holding shares in particular US stocks because it becomes too much of a hurdle in taxes. I just hold NASDAQ ETF, which is on the Bombay Stock Exchange.
Okay. NVIDIA increases dividend by 150% to 10 cents per share. Interesting that they increase dividend. Let me see what other headlines here, kind of the tidbits. NVIDIA gains as Q1 results guidance top expectations announces 10-to-1 split. So increased dividend, beat on earnings, beat on revenue, announced a 10-to-1 split. NVIDIA shares rose 2% in extended hours trading on Wednesday after semiconductor giant reported quarterly results and guidance that topped Wall Street expectations. Looking to the second quarter of fiscal 2025, NVIDIA expects to generate $28 billion of revenue, plus or minus 2%. Analysts were forecasting $26.8 billion in revenue. Adjusted gross margins forecast to be around 75.5%, plus or minus 50 basis points, while adjusted operating expenses are expected to be around 2.8%. Quote, the next industrial revolution has begun. Companies and countries are partnering with NVIDIA to shift the trillion-dollar traditional data centers to accelerated computing and build a new type of data center, AI factories, to produce a new commodity, artificial intelligence, said Jensen Huang, founder and CEO. AI will bring significant productivity gains to nearly every industry and help companies be more cost and energy efficient while expanding revenue opportunities. Uzi?
I just wanted to note that I did have more Tesla shares for a while, but now my 15 Nvidia shares will be larger than my Tesla holdings. So it's a little insane with the 10-to-1 split. Very exciting, but it could be the top.
You mean the number of shares?
Yes, the number. By weighting, I'm 17% Tesla. This is not including bonds and mutual funds. 17% Tesla and then 15% Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the sovereign AI theme is quite interesting. I don't know which countries the United States will sort of allow that to happen. But keep seeing Jensen in these international conferences, touching shoulders, and it seems like that will be a large growth factor once, I guess, the U.S. market becomes more competitive.
I mean, he has to sell some sort of growth story, but if you notice, there's never a number around it. Like even when you talk about it, you're like large opportunity. Well, how big is the opportunity? Finflexity?
Yeah, the sovereign opportunity, you could at most attribute about 8 billion in orders from each country that orders it, maybe around 6 nations, France, Germany, UK. So at most it is 2 quarters of revenue. You can't expect more than that from first orders right now.
John Lee, have you made any adjustments to your Tesla holdings ahead of this June 13 vote, whether selling some shares, all shares, or buying puts as insurance? How are you feeling about the next couple of weeks? Your audio is really far away. Okay. Stacy, how about you?
Oh, I don't. As far as singing, is that what you're saying, or do I have an
No,
opinion on?
have you made any adjustments to your Tesla holdings ahead of this June 13th
Oh,
vote?
me? No. I have not made any adjustments to my holdings. No, I still have the same amount of shares I had in the last month or two.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
25 minutes to go until the end of the space. If you have any questions, comments, please request to speak. Finflexity?
Yeah, so they have written that announced BYD, Xpeng, GAC's AI Hyper, Neuro, and others have chosen to power their next generation car platforms using Nvidia Drive Thor. So, they basically all Chinese makers at this point.
John Lee?
Yeah, to answer your question, when the Supercharger team was let go, I let go about 2/5 of my shares, so I only have about 3,000 shares now.
So you sold some shares based on Supercharger team being let go?
Yeah, that was kind of spooky.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It seemed like an erratic move to me, and I don't like erratic moves from CEOs.
You don't have to answer any of these personal finance questions. I totally understand if people want to keep that private. What percent of your total holdings, let's say, is Tesla?
About a quarter.
Got it.
Yeah, it wasn't ever intended to be that large. It just got that large through splits and increases.
And what did you do with the cash that you got for selling some of your shares?
It's sitting in Vanguard money mutual funds right now, or just the money market.
How did you interpret the headlines that Tesla hired some of the Supercharger team back?
That's encouraging. When I saw the erratic behavior, I thought, wow, I don't want to, I think the erratic behavior will cause a volatility. And I didn't have any cash at all to take advantage of any dips. So I thought it would be better to back off. I mean, all the financial advisors always advise me that I'm way too overweight and I don't have enough cash. So I thought I would be more conservative.
Got it. Barbara?
Oh, hey guys, sorry, just took a bite of soup. Okay, so yeah, hey, I'm only mentioning this because somebody had brought up Nvidia, but I just read an article today about a new chip that a Chinese scientist, I guess, invented that I thought would be super useful for Tesla, or for space travel.
We're actually, I want to focus on the Supercharging team, but can you link that article in the replies? I'll take a look and then maybe we can talk about it tomorrow.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
it's in there. You bet.
All right. John Lee. So you said it was an erratic move. Is that based on, what is that based on? Let me kind of ask in an open and quick way.
I've always thought that the Supercharger, I believe them when they present in shareholders meetings that the Superchargers are intrinsically important to the success of Tesla. And so when they fired the Supercharger team, I just didn't understand it. So that seemed erratic to me.
Scott?
Yeah, so for the supercharging thing, the longer I've looked at this, the more I think that he kind of just took the approach of deploying superchargers is kind of like Blockbuster. It's still making money today, but if you're in the business of putting them out there and finding places to stick them, that's just not worth it anymore. And it was just the right move.
Johnny?
I as I think about it, you know, as this continues to sink in, I have some sympathy for that view. And I think that with everyone going to NACS and everyone using basically CCS over NACS, including Tesla, that this will become more commodity. So Tesla's not in commodity, they're in growth.
Well, Scott, there you go. You just convinced Johnny.
I just wondered, that's just how it's been hitting me. It freaked me out too. I didn't sell any of my positions, but I don't have that many. But now it just makes more sense. It's just not the right way to spend your money.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that superchargers don't make money. They are break even. The supercharger network is break even. It's a very hardware intense business, also very labor intense, and it's limited a lot often by permitting activity. So sometimes it takes, from what I understand, it can take up to years to bring a supercharger site, even though Tesla has perfected the manufacturing of these things and they put them in concrete and you can plop it in. Installation can take as short as a few days. The permitting activities seems to be the limiting factor. So just like Tesla kind of phased out of the solar generation business when it was clear that the others can handle that part and Tesla can focus on more important projects that others cannot handle, I believe supercharging business is in that bucket as well. Just like John Lee said, the industry around NAC has coalesced around NACS, North America Charging Standard. There are plenty of people, plenty of companies that install these things now. Just like there are plenty of companies that install stationary storage at residential stationary storage. So Tesla produces the power walls and then ships them to installers for them to handle all the permitting bottlenecks. I think supercharging is kind of moving in that direction. And I suspect that Elon wanted to take this step at some point. Maybe the back and forth about laying people off, I'm not going to lay people off, etc. Maybe they accelerated the process. But I wouldn't classify it as a 100% rash decision, John Lee.
Will they end up selling the supercharger business itself?
No, I mean produce the superchargers and then sell them to installers.
Yeah.
Just like they do with Powerwalls.
Yeah.
Uzi, then Chand, then Pennington.
Well, I first want to say I understand the need for liquidity because when you have a scarce resource, you can only make so many decisions, and the larger your investments are, if you have less liquidity, it would affect them. But then, on the irrational point, I just read the Elon Musk book about like 6 months ago, and I think about the algorithm frequently. And I think this is just step 2. And it's if you delete and then if you haven't deleted enough, take back 10%. When you look at it in terms of that framework, it's quite rational. It's just he's not going to signal I'm making this decision because of X, Y, and Z. And there's also you're cutting someone's job, so that's always tough.
Chand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought I was also surprised, like when he cut back on the team, but it seemed like because he got rid of the whole team, it was more that he wanted to make it more efficient from a people point of view, and he's probably going to. He's already said that he's going to invest certain billions yearly still into it, so he probably just wanted to restructure who's actually in the team. But I was just wondering, to your point, Yaman, you said like other companies can make them now or install them, but are they actually going to be usable? Because I've driven loads of different electric cars around Europe, and I always go to the Tesla chargers because they actually work, and the others don't.
Well, that's in part because the hardware sucks, right? So the hardware is still going to be Tesla hardware, and it looks like we're moving from CCS to NACS. I think the industry is maturing. I think the uptime of even other installations will improve over time. I think I agree with Elon that this is time for Tesla to move on from focusing on this high capex, high labor intensive, and zero margin business, so that Tesla can focus on Optimus, Cybertruck. These are high margin, important products that others cannot do. Only Tesla can do these things at scale profitably. I mean, look at F-150 Lightning. Look at R1T. Look at all these failed products.
Do you think or do you think there's a chance that Tesla are maybe going to pivot towards a wireless charging system for the
Yeah,
robotaxis?
yeah. I mean, maybe that is part of the plan. Sure. I'm not sure about that though. We can ask Omar's opinion when he gets back here tomorrow, probably. Pennington and then Michael.
I think your analysis is smart and could be very accurate. The thing with
Machine. Sorry, can you say that again for Machine?
I will say it again. I said I think your analysis was very smart and accurate. What
Thank
caught investors off guard, sort of to John's point, was that this event took place after the earnings call. So, in a perfect world, you do the terminations and then you justify them on the earnings call. You get everything out. But this was after the earnings call. So it surprised investors as soon as investors thought there would be some sort of solid ground. It just caught people off guard. And without the explanation, everybody's coming up to your space saying, what? Why? I don't understand. Because we never had the opportunity to hear the justification in the earnings call.
Michael, then Machine, then Political Reality.
I just wanted to address just a couple things. One, the Supercharger business is profitable. They wrote as much in their quarterly letter. And also, Elon has tweeted before that they aim for 30% gross margin and 10% net margin on pay-for-use charging. That said, I think it is very capital intensive, and it does take a really long time to build new superchargers.
Can you link to the quarterly report that you mentioned?
Sure. I was actually just fact checking myself to make sure I remembered it correctly. Just go to the Q4 quarterly report and
just
yeah.
link it. When after you're done, I'm gonna go to other speakers and you can maybe find it.
Okay. Yeah. So I can definitely link that. But yeah, it does take a long time to build them. Could be 1 to 2 years from the end-to-end process. But the thing is that even after the layoff, they've continued to deploy chargers. Of course, it might take a while for the layoffs to impact the charger deployment rate. They deployed, I believe, 58 chargers since then, since the layoff, which is a pretty good pace. So I think we'll see as they hire back, and hopefully they'll get more efficient. I think I don't think Elon's intent was to completely gut supercharging. I think he wanted to cut significantly, and Rebecca Tanucci stood up to him and said, no, I don't want to cut more of my team than I already had. And he probably said, all right, then I'll cut the entire team and build it from the ground up.
Yeah. All right. We have 14 minutes to go, after which I'm going to start the after party for patrons only. The link to that is at the top of our screens. It's basically a 30-minute summary of what we discussed here, maybe touch on after hours action, answer questions from patrons, and maybe a bit of macro data as well. Machine.
Someone calling you smart is like saying Tesla is very profitable. They're both, maybe they were true at one point, but they're not anymore. And you're going on and on about, oh, this is a genius move to cut off the supercharger. Meanwhile, the elephant standing in the room, Nvidia, massive earnings report. You could have put your money into Nvidia last fall, like I was telling you to, and it would have doubled by now. Instead, your money's halved. It's a 4x difference, and it's really just embarrassing for the space for you to constantly be
First of
wrong.
all, I don't remember you saying anything about put your money in Nvidia last fall. And secondly, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy in after this result?
Well, I need to listen to the earnings report or transcript
Okay,
after.
so why don't you do all that and then come back with your conviction? Political reality.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment on Supercharger. I've never thought it was the core kind of business that Tesla should focus on once it opened up NACS to the marketplace on a royalty-free basis. But I also think at the same time there was much better messaging that could have been done. It could have been a restructuring of the team. It could have been a downsizing. But this wholesale firing of everybody is an extremely, I think somebody said erratic. It's just a strange situation, and it's spooky. I mean, obviously I'm a bear, so it's fine. But just as an operator and someone who runs business, it's concerning.
Okay,
And
operator.
Yeah.
Again, I remind everybody that there are hundreds of EV companies that tried and failed. Imagine if you watch football or whatever sports you watch, however many teams, only one, let's say, saw the finish line, finished the season, and every other quarterback just got injured, stopped playing halfway through the season for whatever reason. And then us, the fans, are like sitting in our couches and saying that quarterback who won should have thrown a little harder, should have thrown a little softer, should have gone to the running back instead. Like he's literally the only one that succeeded. And so this like next level armchair quarterbacking, I feel like we need to invent a new phrase for this behavior. Sean.
So I know that BP has bought Tesla Supercharger hardware, and I'm familiar with gas stations that they don't make much of their money on the actual fuel. They make it when people walk inside their stores and buy convenience store items. So my guess is Tesla's gonna maybe partner with a BP and say, hey, you want to make the hardware? Here's how you do it. But just because the whole industry has access to the NACS connector, it doesn't mean that they have the reliability behind that. So I'm hoping that they do work on that reliability.
Michael.
So the hardware is Tesla is still building. That team didn't get cut. They're building that in New York. So they're going to continue building the hardware. What BP did was buy that hardware, and they'll go and deploy it, do all the leases, do all the permitting, do all the utility interconnection collaboration, do all that work. That takes like a year plus for a supercharger site. So Tesla will still be building the hardware.
Michael, I see on the replies that you said, quote, the biggest drivers of profit in the services generation in 2023 were part sales, used vehicle sales, merchandise sales, and pay-per-use supercharging. This is not enough to say supercharging is profitable.
I mean, it says there that they're profitable. It said that they have profit in the services, and this is what it's driven by.
They listed 4 things. Pay-per-use charging is the final thing, and this is only for gross profits. It excludes operating expenses. So this is nowhere even close to supporting what you said earlier.
There's also the Elon tweet about aiming for 30% gross margin and 10% net margin.
Okay,
and
can you find that too?
Sure.
Yoda. Yoda?
Yeah, sorry, just listening in, having some audio issues. You guys go ahead first, sorry.
Okay. Sean, did you get a chance to talk?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. 8 minutes to the after party. This is a 30-minute summary of what we talked about. Any other news, anything else patrons want to ask, the link to which is at the top of our screens. Luke, you may unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
What's your question, Luke?
Oh, yeah. Just I wanted to ask if anybody has thought of or heard of any collaboration between Kimball's restaurant and the Tesla Supercharger locations, like restaurant-wise and entertainment-wise.
I haven't heard any collaboration. Scott.
Yeah, I read a post about his restaurant that's like mostly shut down there in Denver. Some guy that goes on walks every day, and he was talking about how it's kind of sad. So I don't know if that's going to work out.
Thank you. Henry?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share a lot of people, I think the majority of the speakers here and the people online are expressing how they're investing in Tesla or not based on events, announcements from Tesla. Although I do take that into consideration, I just wanted to share that I am more price driven. And I think the price action in the past, I would say maybe 2 weeks, has been encouraging, but I think it's premature.
Henry, what's your question?
My question is does the business fundamentals and and any announcement, does the people here make that as a judgment for their purchase or sales solely, or do they actually look at the price?
Well, I think it's, this is a very diverse group of investors, both in the institutional side and on the retail side. I would, this is one of those cases, if you study statistics, when the range of data is so wide, the meaning of the average reduces. So there is no average investor. There's no average retail investor. There's no average institutional investor. There are literally hundreds of different ways people invest. So I can't really answer that question. Yoda.
Hey, Henry, and just to use me as one data point, I don't really look at price, certainly not in the last digit or even the second digit. I really look at accumulating production capacity, analyze production capacity in seconds when I buy and invest in Tesla, just as an example.
Thank you. Michael, I see the post. This is from April 2022. Ross asked, hey, Elon, trying to model out Supercharger network value. It seems you work at 50% gross margin on the energy cost. Is this across network or it varies by location? Thanks. Elon said, we aim for 30% gross margin or approximately 10% profitability, all costs included. So they aim for 10%, all costs included. So the reality is probably something less than that. So when I say, unprofitable, break even, it's in line with that. Do you agree?
Yeah, sure. I would agree that it's very close to break even. Not like it's not a huge profit generating area, but frankly, the percentage profit on the car business is not very high anymore either. So,
well, that's without the Cybertruck, right? That's
Cybertruck is 250K volume incremental, right?
It's probably going to go beyond that, but the thing is, to analyze, like I discussed earlier in a different, in earlier spaces, to estimate the profitability of Tesla auto business, you can't do it in current conditions because currently interest rates are high, They're restrictive on the economy. The Fed has talked about, real interest rates are positive. They're about 3% today, 2.5% to 3% real interest rates. And these interest rates are going to come down. And when that happens, and the Rivians and the Lucids and all the Me Too companies go by the wayside, Tesla will be able to generate more profits as it did in previous years. So I wouldn't write off sexy vehicles as unprofitable at this point. And Cybertruck, let's see what happens. I think Cybertruck profitability will surprise people. And so, and then the other thing is, we've seen headlines of Tesla hiring back supercharger folks, but I don't know of one person except that one executive that came back. I've been asking around, and I'm not aware of any one person that got hired back. So I strongly believe this is more of a strategic decision rather than a rash decision. Maybe the negotiations with the pushback from the executive, took Elon to the next level of kind of accelerating the thing, but it makes sense when you step back and think about it, as John Lee also said and Scott also said. Yoda and then Michael.
Yeah, I think the right way to look at the sexy fleet from a margin perspective is that you want to look at the printer and ink business. So, whether it's 10% all in or potentially even approaching zero, the hardware side of the business is there to create a large fleet that can then generate the ink business, which is a high margin. So in this case, the FSD, uh, subscriptions, which is recurring, as well as a Robotaxi potential business. So I think as Tesla approaches solving unsupervised full self-driving, you're going to see the margin expand on the software side.
1 minute to the after party, the link to which is at the top of your screens. Michael.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed with Tesla Yoda. And I just wanted to react to your Cybertruck thing because outside of this space, everyone thinks Cybertruck is a disaster and that the ramp is going slowly and whatnot, when the ramp is actually going pretty well. They achieved the 1,000 burst rate. I think they're around 800 right now per week on the Cybertruck. I think they're going to do at least 10, 11,000 in Q2.
Okay.
So it's well.
Thank you. We'll start tomorrow with Cybertruck discussion, going to the Patreon. Thank you very much, everybody. Talk tomorrow.